what was really strange is that most of these defendants were represented by counsel when we were talking to them. The only one that wasn't was Tim Pool, who thought that he could negotiate with me without an attorney.
Oh my gosh!
He didn't put a retraction either.
Well, I want to hear about Tim Pool, Mark, but.
Oh, it's going to go splendidly, I'm sure. I mean, what amazing kind of like legal powers does Tim hide underneath the beanie? You know, he doesn't need lawyers. No, not like you NPCs, using counsel to speak to counsel to try and defend yourself against a potential lawsuit. Nah, you gotta go rogue. Come on, rip the beanie off. Just go ahead.
Saying the pictures of her without them were actually somebody else.
My God, gigantism.
This is somebody who did this for attention. One of them, look, I don't know why, but I have to assume one of the most brilliant right-wing troll jobs ever devised, because they made international headlines. You had Tucker Carlson covering this.
Oh,
this,
yeah.
Unfortunately, I think this damaged discussions around trans rights. Because this person...
Oh, absolutely. And that was the point. And it was by design, which is why there were so many people, again, right-wing or right-wing adjacent, or even people who like to pretend that they're somehow leftists, broadcasting this story. And like the fact that Chew on Head was trying to say like this is a litmus test for the left. If they think that this is okay, then how far have things gone? You know, always so excited to throw the rest of the LGBTQ plus community under the bus as she is, and continuously just do the fear mongering of the right. But from a bisexual socialist, so you know everyone can realize how far things have gotten. And I could tell from the get go that this story, even if it turned out to be 100% true, that this was a trans woman who was working at a school and intentionally was dressing in a way that was provocative to try and center a conversation around what was appropriate or not appropriate to show children, that it was uniquely getting broadcast and amplified by the right. So much so that once again, Libs of TikTok, Matt Walsh, a whole bunch of them do stories on it, and there's a whole bunch of parents protesting outside of the school being like, holy fuck, this is disgusting, how could someone do this? Again, directing all their anger and rage towards trans people, when this is a cis man who is doing this, again, so that it provokes people like Tucker Carlson or Haya Rychek or Bill Maher to report on it, to talk about it, to do stories on this, as if like, can you see how the gender ideology, the trans people, they've lost their minds. Now they're saying that it's completely okay to wear monstrously huge prosthetic breasts with the enormous nipples and show that to children. And meanwhile, you know, Tucker does like 4 or 5 segments where he's just like, Mummy Milky, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Pretended to be trans, did this ridiculous thing that they later on, now are being themselves. Just crazy. This,
the Crowder method, pretty much.
Parent here commenting on this, saying, why is she so quick to drop the big prosthetics, tight clothing, and wig? 41-year-old mother Michelle told the Post earlier this week, quote, it's disingenuous and it's obvious now was all an attention grab at the expense of children's safety. And she goes on to explain.
Oh, one of the big reasons, if you're asking why people still believe all this kind of shit, is because the very fucking ghouls who spread it never, ever issue retractions, never ever issue corrections, never ever admit their faults or mistakes. You don't get that from that same group of people because they don't have to, which is going to be a great segue into the whole Crowder and Tim Pool getting sued. I'm starting to sound like Donald Trump. Yeah, they're getting sued, not the first time, number 2. But yeah, in that case, we have Steven Crowder, Tim Pool spreading once again completely falsifiable far-right conspiracy theory that a 22-year-old Jewish student at a college happens to be actually secretly a far-right neo-Nazi that is actually secretly, perhaps, I mean, read into this if you will, being planted to make right-wingers look bad and to make Nazis appear as if they are actually somehow coming back in America. You know how they'll like try to do terrorism and then they'll have like Nazi flags in the truck, but it's like it's kind of like perfectly new, as if someone just bought that Nazi flag, kind of sussy. And then there's other mass shooters who watch people like Tim Pool and stuff like that, but they have swastikas tattooed on their bodies, but they're not even white, which is like kind of weird. Like, is this actually happening? Are these people actually neo-Nazis? And they might even have manifestos in which they praise Libs of TikTok and talk about how they're neo-Nazis. But like, can we actually take that as true because it happens to be on like a Russian social media site? So is it actually kind of sussy-wussy? All that kind of shit. Same thing when you spread just like fear-mongering transphobic story after fear-mongering transphobic story. In this case, that this teacher was a trans woman who was going to school wearing massively revealing prosthetic vests with enormous nipples to try and sexually arouse children or something like that. That story keeps on getting press. The same individual actually was like doing skydiving. He like jumped from a plane with a whole bunch of other people and some like ex-porn stars, something like that. And then everyone was like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Like, who is this person? Why isn't anyone doing anything about this? What's the school board? How are they responding to this and all that? And then yes, the story finally breaks that they were photographed when they're not in character at school, just living their lives as a regular cis person who happens to in his own time speak out against wokeness. The whole thing's a troll job or whatever. But there's not going to be a retraction. There's not going to be a statement. That's how Bill Maher can find this story, this 2-year-old story, and still breathe new life into it. Because the Joe Rogans of the world don't at the start of the next episode be, well, actually, Jamie and a whole bunch of you wrote into me and like, bro, like fucking hell, it's crazy that like, yeah. So apparently this like dude is a dude, and this dude is the one dressing up with like the giant tits and shit. And so like it wasn't a trans woman. So like it's kind of fucked up for me to say that like, you know, trans women are like predators because of that. So you don't get that. Just business as usual. One more story, one more lie, next one. One more story, one more lie, next one. Oh, did you know the new mass shooting that just happened was from a trans teenager? 100% confirmed. Definitely true. 100%. I'm saying it now here. Can't believe it. Trans people are mass shooters and they're out of control. And then next day it's like, that person was not trans. Didn't even identify as non-binary or use they them pronouns. They were not trans. That was just completely falsifiable. Again, the woman in question is a mother, and she has never once mentioned that she's in cis and uses she her and is a cis woman. So this is a weird thing for you to have claimed that the shooter was trans in fact when they weren't. This is weird. But are you going to issue a retraction? No. A statement? Nothing. Correction? No. That's just the way it goes, you know. In the case of the new one that's coming up with Tim Pool, which I want to take a look at right now, this is in Rolling Stone. Right-wing outlets and influencers sued by man misidentified as mass shooter. Mauricio Garcia, who shares the name of the Allen, Texas shooter, is suing Tim Pool and Steven Crowder after his photo was used in coverage of the massacre. A man who falsely accused of carrying out a deadly mass shooting in Allen, Texas, has sued multiple prominent right-wing influencers and conservative media outlets for libel over the coverage of the massacre. According to the Huffington Post, which first reported the lawsuit, Mauricio Garcia, 36-year-old Texas resident, has accused Fox News, Televisa, Univision, Newsmax, along with influencers Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, and InfoWars host Owen Schroyer, amongst others, as having recklessly disregarded basic journalistic safeguards to publish the photo of an innocent man, branding him as a neo-Nazi murderer to his local community and the nation at large. In May last year, gunmen shot and killed 8 shoppers at a mall in Allen, Texas. The alleged shooter, who identified as a 33-year-old, was a self-avowed neo-Nazi who spelled racist and violent rhetoric online for months before carrying out the massacre. As networks and online sleuths work to identify the shooter, the lawsuit alleges that the defendants misidentified Garcia as Martinez Garcia for days, leading to harassment and death threats against an innocent man and his family. The lawsuit accuses Fox News of having used the image of an innocent 36-year-old plaintiff, Mauricio Garcia, to portray the gunman in an article published on their website and having refused to retract the article after being notified of their mistake. Additionally, Newsmax is accused of having prominently displayed a misidentified photo of Garcia on multiple shows, accusing him of being a member of the Perro Tango Blast, a prison gang. Garcia argues conspiracy theories spread by right-wing influencers named in the lawsuit further compounded the wrongful damage to his reputation. In the aftermath of the shooting, prominent conservative promoted conspiracy theories that Martinez Garcia's extremist ties and massacre itself were a psyop. The lawsuit accuses Poole, Crowder, and Schroyer of wrongfully using his image in their discussion of the shooting, and in some instances linking him to their conspiracies. The lawyers allege the Pool's media outfit, Timcast Media Group, published multiple articles on their website using Garcia's image to portray the gunman. Timcast Media Group also published an episode of Timcast IRL in which the thumbnail image for the video photographed of the plaintiff. This image was viewable not only by YouTube viewers who actually clicked on the video, but to any user who served the video on their feeds in a recommendation sidebar.
Some pending sanctions in that case, and we're also going to have a hearing on the motion to dismiss on April 22nd.
And what is the case about? Like, what is your client claiming?
This one is strange. It really is. To even think of the idea that one of the richest and most influential people on the planet accused a 22-year-old Jewish college student of being a neo-Nazi involved in a neo-Nazi brawl in Portland, Oregon.
The beautiful thing about this lawsuit as well, again, Discovery, gotta love Discovery, is discovering that it was proved in court that Elon Musk was in fact the owner of the burner account, in which he pretends to be his own child, being very strange and sexual with other people, also complaining about how Grimes left the Tesla man, all that kind of stuff. Super weird, super cringe, super creepy, but now it is just a matter of actual public record that was in fact the burner account of Elon Musk, the one who's like, is this Pyeon? Am I watching a Pyeon video? What's it like clubbing in Japan? Or why did Grimes leave the Tesla guy? He's so great and good. All that shit. That was Elon Musk tweeting all that cringe. So yeah, the funniest thing about that too was having the Elon Musk fanboys still trying to defend him and being like, this is just classic trolling, Serfs. Lance wouldn't know what that's like. Oh yeah, classic. I was like, classic trolling. Oof, you have painted yourself into a weird ass corner here. So wait, you think it's just classic trolling to pretend to be like a 6 or 8 year old child that you have and then to act real sexual with other people in that persona? That's just classic trolling? Weird. Fucked up. Yeah, maybe talk to someone.
Which is completely absurd and was based on some very dubious tweets from some anonymous weirdos on Twitter. And Mr. Musk decided to spread that to the world. And Ben Brody's not going to let that happen.
Great. And I appreciate your catching us up with that. You know, at one point it's the I don't know if the word is irony, but it is fascinating to watch this guy who bought Twitter essentially made it possible to almost make it impossible to use Twitter as a source to validate things, keeps getting tripped up by essentially what he wrought on himself.
That's true.
By making Twitter a much less reliable source of information that he spreads. I find somewhat fascinating. But you've got a lot of stuff on your plate in terms of like false information. I mentioned before you came on that you are representing a plaintiff, Mauricio Garcia, in a case. Tell us about that case.
Sure. Most of y'all remember last year, during last summer, there was a neo-Nazi shooter down in Allen, Texas at the outlet malls. Killed quite a few people down there. It was a really, really nasty event. In the aftermath of that, the law enforcement released the name of the shooter and his date of.
I thought that was going to be a turning point, by the way, in terms of how people actually look at the potential stochastic terrorism or the influences that far-right people can have, especially on members of their audience who are extremists, because obviously every single person who watches Nick Fuentes is not going to commit acts of violence. Otherwise, there would be thousands of people committing acts of violence every single day. But a small percentage of every viewer who watches Right Check or lives on TikTok or stuff like that is going to want to pick up a phone and then call in a bomb threat to the target that she has pointed the target at any given day. In the case of this mass shooter, this racist-ass neo-Nazi, there was so much gaslighting that happened right away. First, it was, well, this person's Hispanic, so they're not white, so they can't be a white supremacist. No, that's never happened before. Also, there is a unbelievable amount of evidence of this person's social media history from their social media accounts in which they were doing it, yes, on Russian social media accounts. It doesn't change the fact they're using social media to do all their Nazi shit. They're doing it where they can get away with more Nazi shit. They have professed to be big fans of Libs of TikTok. This mass shooter professed to admire what Libs of TikTok was doing. This mass shooter had watched several episodes of Tim Pool's podcast where he had white supremacists on, and then Tim Pool's defense of that was like, well, were they subscribed? Were they? They didn't hit the subscribe button, so they're clearly just not a fan. I mean, you could also make an argument that they weren't watching you because they wanted to see what you had to say. They were watching you because you have a carousel of white supremacists on your show. And when you bring them on, people who are white supremacists who resonate with their message are going to want to watch that. If it's on the Tim Pool show or if it's on another place, wherever Nick Fuentes is being featured, they're going to gravitate towards those kind of shit, you know?
Birth. But several media organizations, sort of in their haste to try to get a story out, it labeled the wrong person. Not even the right birth date of my client, Mauricio Garcia, put his face out to the world. And for a lot of these organizations, it was because my client has a very Chicano appearance. He is a Dallas lowrider, and he does not look like the kind of Mexican American who would sympathize with white supremacy. And so a lot of these right-wing organizations wanted to put his face out there to say, hey, look at this Mexican guy. He's not a Nazi. Look at this guy. And as a result, I mean, millions of people saw my client as a monster. And this was done by big variety of news organizations, including Fox News, Newsmax, Tim Pool, Steven Crowder, Owen Schroyer, Hollywood Unlocked, Simon Ateba, and Today News Africa. I mean, we have a large group of defendants who all basically, ignored basic journalistic precautions. And as a result, this poor young man, his mom was getting calls from people they've known all their lives saying, "Hey, I'm so sorry about your son. I'm so sorry your son is a neo-Nazi killer."
So fucked
Oh
up.
my
And,
God.
his mom could correct some of those when they'd call, but that family's just sitting there thinking about all the people in their lives who have known them throughout their.
And again, this is the stuff that you never think about, because like you turn the webcam off, you turn the internet off, you walk away from the computer, there's no real world damage. After all, I just spent a couple hours broadcasting complete verifiable lies, and I don't have to issue corrections because freedom of speech or whatevs. And I got all my subscribers, got my mug club, got the timcast.com people signing up. Everything's great. Just go on to the next story.
Lives who aren't going to call, who will be too embarrassed to ever call. And it has torn this poor kid up. He just feels so guilty about what it's done to the family.
And do you know where the conflation of your client with the actual neo-Nazi shooter originated from? What
It was on social media, and it looks to be on Twitter. Is
Okay.
where it first started.
Gotcha.
And then, it was originally just social media people getting it wrong, right? Having the wrong identity. And then it was these commercial media organizations who are expected to have institutional guardrails against this sort of stuff. I mean, photo verification is not a challenging thing to do as a journalist. If you can't confirm the provenance of a picture and know what it is and where it came from, you just can't put that out to the world, especially if you're going to try to say it depicts a neo-Nazi mass murderer. And so really, there's not much we can do about just random people on social media, but these commercial enterprises that are profiting from the provision of news, they have to use reasonable care. And what we've seen is that the bigger organizations, like in this case, Fox and Univision, they've just done away with their institutional guardrails because it's just costing them too much money. And then you have these new, people like Crowder and Poole who are running these low-cost operations who never cared about the institutional guardrails to begin with. So the entire media apparatus is failing from top to bottom.
This also goes into this whole problem with, like, you get your Glenn Greenwalds, right? They start telling you about how people like Higher Right Check, they deserve to be 100% anonymous, be 100% above scrutiny, not have to follow or adhere to any kinds of codes of conduct, because this is not a journalistic outfit. This is just a private account of a private individual who's just trying to put information out there that they seem to think is cringe. Libs being cringe. That's all it is. There's nothing more to this. And it's like these accounts or these people or these pundits or these shows amass monstrously huge followings. Some of them can be comparable to television. So if you have someone who, like Joe Rogan, for example, if they have 11 to 13 million regular viewers of the show, downloads, views, streams, whatever it is, that's a fuck ton of people who will listen to Joe Rogan say, Libs of TikTok is actually just posting liberal cringe. This person is just posting this. This is not actually maybe the mass shooter you think it is. How could this person be a mass shooter if at the end of the day, are they really white supremacists if they're not white? Does that make sense? So yes, in the same way that people could have reach if they were considered to be a regular, journalistic outlet or whatever you have, I completely agree that the Tim Pools of the world or the Serfs or whatever you want to call them, they're not journalists, okay? They're opinion pieces. All of them are opinion. It's opinion on news. They require legacy media to be able to use as a jump off point to say, here's what this story's telling you. Here's what I think. Here's what's going on in my brain based on the thing you see. But at the same time, there does need to be a responsibility. If you are going to be reporting on things, especially as they're happening, live news, mass shooting, it just happened, all the information's coming out. Yes, obviously, temper, your assumptions and jumping off because real people can get hurt. But using a conspiracy theory, then running with a conspiracy theory, even after it could be falsifiable, like even after someone can say, that's not the person you're looking for. This person is catching a stray right now. Like this is a terrible character assassination of someone who's completely innocent and literally only shares the last name of a mass shooter. That's the only connection that they have with this horrifying event.
Bottom. This isn't a problem that's just isolated to one kind of media.
It makes me think of Spotify and some of the sort of lies that come out of Rogan's show. He's smart enough not to maybe have these lies focused on one person enough so that somebody could bring an action. It's sort of just like, who has standing in these issues in terms of like Spotify having to take responsibility for these things. But the thing that really stuck out for me in reading your plaintiff's petition is in each of these instances, it seems, and I think I read all of the defendants. The outlet, I mean, because we get stuff wrong here. We're very cautious about putting pictures out. I don't know if we ever do that, really, frankly. But we get stuff wrong, a variety of things. I mean, but we're really careful with identities, I have to say. But be that as it may, people make mistakes. But in each of these instances, it seems like there was an opportunity for these outlets to correct themselves. And they didn't.
Yeah.
And they didn't, or to the extent that they even did any effort, they never did a retraction.
Right. Most
that
of them just
really strikes me as like almost like doubly bad.
It is. And in Texas, it's bizarre because if they had just apologized and issued a retraction, they wouldn't face punitive damages. But they all made the decision in this case not to apologize for certain broadcasts. And, in some of those, it makes sense.
So that would have been free, by the way. I'm not offering you legal advice. I don't have any actual legal advice to provide. Plus, I'm just not a lawyer, so I can't do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, seems like it might be a little cheaper than what's about to happen.
Some of them, are just not going to respond to you. Some of them did, and we had discussions, and they deleted the articles quietly.
When Fox airs a retraction, they do it at 4 a.m. Just do that. You could just throw it into like a throwaway, one of those like Tim Pool episodes where he's just basically like talking to the camera the whole time. And he's got like the news right beside him. And then he's like, my friends, this is a dark day when we start to believe the lies. And by the way, I want to issue a correction that Texas mass shooter actually wasn't actually the person Garcia. That I misidentified them. The photo was incorrect. I apologize sincerely. And we have to ask ourselves, what would Thanos do?
Quietly, but didn't print retractions. Or you have in the case of Univision, who, when we went to them, they originally just told us, we just did it on a streaming service. And, nobody really watches that. And then we found out, no, the whole time they had been broadcasting it to millions of people on their primetime shows and didn't print a retraction for any of that. It really is strange. And what was really strange is that most of these defendants were represented by.
That's such a wild defense too, because I'm nowhere near as big as any of those channels, but I still have to acknowledge the fact that there's 470 people watching on YouTube right now. There's almost 300 people watching on Twitch. That's still a significant amount of people. If I was to just straight up say hey, by the way, Tim Pool's this actual mass shooter. I've identified Tim Pool as the mass shooter in this mass shooting. Here's a picture of Tim Pool and here's a picture of the mass shooter. They have the same name, Pool. Look, this him. He did it. He did the shooting. It's him, everybody. I would expect that there would still be some kind of legal repercussion for that, because everyone could be like, no, Lance, that's not true. He didn't do that. You're misidentifying him. This is the wrong person, wrong Pool, the different beanie. God damn it, Lance, don't do it.
Counsel when we were talking to them. The only one that wasn't was Tim Pool, who thought that he could negotiate with me without an attorney.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't do a retraction either.
Well,
that's the only clip of this I've seen. I saw that one on the internet and I was like, amazing. Oh, I'm so happy about this. Just so we're clear, so everyone knows, all right? The very same lawyer that fucking spanked the shit out of Alex Jones, destroyed Alex Jones' life in the courtroom, that same man, all right, right here, has said that every single other person, and I would say probably correctly here, decided to use their own attorneys to speak. Counsel, yes, okay, you can speak to my counsel. I'm not going to answer you directly. My counsel will know what to say to protect me in the event that anything I should say could be used against me in the lawsuit that you're doing against me. Except for Tim Pool. Tim Pool thought that he could just handle it on his own. Fuck it. Fuck the lawyers. Yeah, fuck them. They're all scams anyway. I can do this myself. You can represent yourself. I mean, everyone can, right? So I could talk to this guy. I'll be totally fine.
It really is strange. And what was really strange is that most of these defendants were represented by counsel when we were talking to them. The only one that wasn't was Tim Pool, who thought that he could negotiate with me without an attorney.
Oh my gosh.
And he didn't put a retraction either.
Well, I want to hear about Tim Pool, Mark, but
oh, it's going to go splendidly, I'm sure. I mean, what amazing kind of legal powers does Tim hide underneath the beanie? He doesn't need lawyers. No, not like you NPCs, using counsel to speak to counsel to try and defend yourself against a potential lawsuit. Nah, you got to go rogue. Come on, rip the beanie off. Just go at it.
I mean, Tim is also very specific. his issue here is that the actual shooter, and this is when I went there and I was talking to him about it, this is what got him very.
It's very difficult to remedy this problem.
That part, I want to read some from the pool thing in this filing, but that part which you just touched on, the idea that they are actively, in the context of these, obviously, I don't. This isn't actionable in from you, but I wonder how much does that aspect of it enhance their culpability or their liability within their case? The idea that they are not only making a mistake, the idea that they are also not issuing a retraction, but then are actually building in an excuse or an alibi for themselves in a more general standpoint, in that, like, if you hear that we're wrong, understand that is part of a big operation that is supposed to smear us. So they're building in their alibi. Does that implicate your case in any way? Does it show intent, or does it show, is it more punitive? Are there more punitive damages? Or is that just like what does that show in the context of your case?
Really, where it comes into play is the damages that the client suffers, right? Because if there's a defamation out there, then one of his ways to do that is either through self-help or through corrective media for people getting it right. And if you have an organization that's actively undermining.
Well, that's why someone like Elon Musk, when Don Lemon questioned him, he was like, well, that's disprovable. You can check the replies. He was actually like, his sources replies to your own tweet, where your own fans will be like, yes, Daddy Musk, you are correct. This is the correct position. Because like, if you're called out for something that is just, again, empirically wrong, and you can be demonstrated very easily, well, that's just not true. In fact, there isn't any evidence towards showing that pilots are being hired specifically just because they're black. Do you have any evidence to the contrary, or are you just a racist? And it's like, the evidence is out there in the replies. You can see it for yourself. And then it's like, so yeah, this is going to be, again, the response in the post-truth world as he's described it. If there is nothing like this, if there is no successful civil litigations, if people aren't basically completely sued into oblivion for using their massive platforms to do complete character assassinations of innocent people, like people had nothing to do with this. This individual in question had nothing to do whatsoever outside of having the same last name. That's the only connection with this horrifying tragedy. But they still get all these problems from people calling in, to actual family members calling in and being like, I'm so sorry that like your son is a mass shooter and a terrible killer and all this kind of stuff. But that never happened. That's fucked up.
Mining those efforts, that is saying, don't believe what you see on these mainstream networks. We're the ones telling you the real truth. Then when that truth gets out, it's less likely to hit people's opinions. So the actual reputational damage to my client is somewhat hindered by what you're exactly talking about, this built-in escape hatch, that if they're wrong, when they're corrected, they can just say, well, that's the fake news. Don't worry about them.
It makes the defamation that much more durable. And so It increases the damages that your client's suffering, because they can never recover in some ways because of other things that these guys have done. That's fascinating.
I mean, look, it's the same.
Also, what happens to a Google search? If someone Google searches you, you're trying to get a job, you're trying to apply for rent or something like that. Someone Google searches you, boom, all these stories come up of a mass shooting. That's like all the top news stories, blah, blah, blah. And pictures of you appear as well in the searches.
In the Sandy Hook case, to this day, no matter how much the volume of reporting that this really happened, there are still people who are absolutely stuck in drinking that Kool-Aid of thinking anything mainstream media tells them is wrong. So it really poses a challenge for these kinds of people who've been hurt by this.
This stuck out for me in the Tim Pool because, and we should just say, when people are looking at this at the original petition, and you can get this online, right? This is available online.
That's a public document.
And and you have it for each one of the defendants here. This is paragraph 84, if people want to follow along at home.
And I'll just go ahead and say, if you need to grab a copy of the petition, Huffington Post has put one up. So Sebastian Murdoch did a story on it today.
And feel free to post this on social media, folks. I know the defendants love the publicity. 84, Poole also claimed on Tipcast IRL that he did not want to show the social media photos. Okay, so this is to be clear. somebody, there was a second sort of like release of photos of the actual guy who perpetrated this, not your client, that was released subsequently on a different site. And this is where Tim Pool decides to act responsibly. This is what's fascinating about this. He's already shown the picture of your client. It's already out there. And then the actual picture surfaces, and Pool claims on Timcast that he did not want to show the social media photos, quote, considering the sensitive nature of these things.
Oh, they're all such liars and grifters. Every single fucking one of them, you know? From the bottom on up, it's just like every aspect of it. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. No shit. No shit, you don't have to show this. Hey, it looks terrible on you. His social media directly implicates that he was watching you and your content. The 3 episodes where you had, again, right, white supremacists on as guests. Yes, as he said to Emma Vigeland in the debate, Emma was trying to point out, Tim, do you not feel that anything that you say, your rhetoric, potentially could be taken or is dangerous for people who have extremist beliefs? Because here's an example of a mass shooter who had watched episodes of your show. And he's like, well, didn't sub. Did you see? No sub button. Wasn't a fan of mine. He hadn't hit subscribe, so wasn't even subbed to my channel. Yeah, he was just watching some of the many white supremacists that I have on my show, but that's about it. So yeah, it would look pretty bad if the person, once they are identified, it comes out that they are not only a neo-Nazi, but they've actually got a fucking massive-ass swastika tattooed on their bodies. Kind of hard to keep running away from that story and being like, well, yeah, but they can't be a white supremacist if they're not white.
So he's already shown the false pictures. And then when the real pictures show up, he doesn't want to show them because it's sensitive. And thus did not show any pictures, the photos of the real shooter. Pool also chided Bellingcat researcher Eric Toller, who published the real shooter's social media profile and photos, claiming that Toller didn't verify it. Now remember, Pool has already shown the unverified photos of the non-shooter, but is now attacking someone for showing. And this is all this does is makes it harder for your client to recapture his reputation. All of this just makes it like a steeper climb to get back to whole or even close to it. And yet at the time Pool made these comments, Timcast Media Group had already published a completely different, unverified and incorrect photo of the plaintiff on its website. And then in addition, Timcast news reporter Josie Glabach, known on Twitter as the Red-Headed Libertarian, posted several tweets declaring that the event was a psyop. And so that none of this happened. So they have now blamed it on the wrong person and then said that none of it happened and that Eric Toller was a CIA operative. Does Toller, maybe Toller has an action.
But in this case, because none of these defendants complied with the retraction statute, and because they did not issue apologies, in this case, you can recover punitive damages without a showing of actual malice.
So that's a prima facie, essentially, show that they're acting in that manner. And so, wow.
Yeah, if these guys negligently did this, this jury can award punitive damages if it thinks that's proper.
You know what's wild too is from a lawyer's perspective, you're probably sitting there thinking that their legal counsel is obviously going to advise them that the easiest thing to do here, because they are, again, just so empirically wrong. This is clearly them with, malice, intentionally trying to target a private citizen who was not involved in this whatsoever. They'll issue apologies. So that's probably what's going to come from this. You'll get your public retractions and apologies. And then when the next phase goes by and it's like, so they're not going to do that. It's like, wow, okay then. Well, yeah, I guess we got ourselves a case.
and I think certainly
you can seek restitution.
That screams for it.
Where are you in this case? I mean, I guess you just filed it. So the process goes, at this point, a couple of defendants are going to come and go like, maybe we can make a deal. Yeah. Right? I mean, I would imagine, who knows? I would imagine a lot of these guys are going to run and say, like, I'm willing to make a deal, or at least their insurance companies are.
Well, you got to understand, some of these people might not be insured. and some of them may not have insurance policies that cover intentional defamation. Right, so you get some issues there.
Who would issue an insurance policy for intentional defamation?
Exactly.
To them.
Yes, exactly.
And does Elon Musk responding to this and calling it a psyop just for within this case amplify your client's I guess case here because of his stature?
Absolutely. So when you have these right-wing outlets who are kind of creating this buzz in the right-wing media, which is not just Tim Pool, but also people like Crowder and Schroyer and Simon Ateba, when these things start bubbling in that right-wing ecosphere, that's where Elon Musk spends most of his time. And so when he starts promoting that to the world, these very messages that were generated by these defendants are getting to far more voices and far more ears than they would before. And so even though in this case, you don't have Elon Musk doing anything to my client, but because he was following along this narrative that was being born on Timcast, that this was all a psyop, this really does hurt my client's ability to make himself whole again.
Yeah, just posting on through it, posting through the whole goddamn thing.
Yeah, so theoretically, if Elon Musk were to have amplified a claim by someone like Tim Pool calling someone basically a pedophile.
Ooh, nice. I'd like to hear with this legal advice, free legal advice that I think Emma is milking at this moment. Yeah, let's see what it is.
That and Elon Musk were to have responded to that would have, also kind of fall under that standard as well.
Absolutely. I can't imagine who we're talking about, but yeah that's.
I mean, unfortunately, the bar is going to be higher because Emma is a public figure. But yeah, make no mistake, if you are on a show and you are basically saying to someone, hey, Emma, do you approve of these kind of books being given to children, even though these books are hardcore pornography and the books themselves aren't actually hardcore pornography, they're a queer coming of age story. But either way, you're like, yeah, this is hardcore porn. And then Emma's like, I'd have to know what the books are specifically, but if it is a coming of age story that's appropriate for teenagers, for example, then they should, I don't see a problem with it. And then at which point Tim Pool's like, well, then you're a pedophile. This is proof that you're a pedophile. You're a pedophile who wants to abuse children and do pedophile stuff. That at that moment, you might be able to point towards it being, again, intent with malice, falsifiable, defamatory. That's why there was no sushi with the boys. Exactly.
Let's just hypothetically say, like, one of us or either of us be considered public figures? I mean, if we're on YouTube, I guess we are. But you would have to know that what you were saying was not based in truth, right? You would people frame it that way, that it requires like a knowledge of falsity. But what it really requires is just a reckless disregard for the truth. So if you had no evidence whatsoever for that claim, and if you have a claim that's just inherently improbable, that it's probably dubious. You should look into it. Those sorts of things make malice as well. So some people describe malice as the kiss of death and
I'm curious. You can kind of see Emma's face right now, and you see the actual gears turning. Just like, No reason whatsoever, totally unrelated to both of us. This is just random conversations about random things.
Defamation suits that if you have a public figure, you're never going to win. I just don't believe that's true. And partially that's because
it's like a big smile there too.
Nature of defamation in the last 10 years has gotten so much more malicious than it ever has been in our culture. Interesting. Well, maybe you should find a lawyer, but we can talk about that another time. So give us a sense of like the timeline here. When, this was released 2 weeks ago. And it was filed 2 weeks ago. Correct. 2 weeks ago. And so and when it's filed,
I'm hoping this leads to Haya losing everything. I am still astounded that there hasn't been a massive class action suit or some kind of a massive lawsuit against Haya Rychek and her stochastic terrorism. Because, look at what's happening now with Planet Fitness. What is it? Like over 30 Planet Fitness locations have reported bomb threats, many of them directly after she had specifically targeted specific locations. It's like, how far do things need to consistently go with Haya? I would imagine at that moment, on that day, the defendants are notified. Is that right? No, actually not. So when they're filed, some of your more sophisticated defendants will pay docket monitoring services to know that they were sued, right? So Fox, for instance, is going to probably know on the day it was sued. But these other defendants have to wait until citation comes back and then service of process happens. And so it was this week that most of these defendants had a service processor. Really? Show up at their doors. I mean, let's say I wanted to. And that's where that great little scene from movies comes from. People who like, you've been served. Yeah, sometimes they get all creative. You know, Seth Rogen will play a you've been served guy, and then he's like, he hides in costume stuff. However you do it though, but you legally have been served. So at that point, they all got served.
Get a sense of like when. I mean, is it public knowledge as to when these people were serviced?
Yeah, exactly.
It is now. I'm telling you right now, it is. And yes, that the majority of
just out of curiosity, what day was it that
this week was Tuesday through Thursday of this week.
Tuesday through Thursday. Maybe we should go back and look at some shows and see how how sweaty people were. That would be very interesting.
That actually would be a great thing. Go back to like Crowder, go back to Poole, go back to, I guess, Owen Schroyer. If anything, I'm guessing Owen and InfoWars have already spun this whole thing. They're not the people who are going to take this, like, you know, without expressing their full and potentially, you know, let's just say legally damning opinions on the whole matter. There's going to be like, this is the deep state. This is obviously the same person who tried to take down Owen Jones is now trying to take down Owen Schroyer. To silence you, buy our dick pills. You got to do it. It's the only thing that'll save us all.
To do.
But yeah, we filed the suit a couple weeks ago. We've obviously we sent letters to the offending parties within 2 weeks of this happening back in May of last year. We've been involved in long periods of negotiation and long periods of making sure everything's set and ready to go for the suit.
Go back and look for Lance's sweaty right-wing takes. Well, hey, that's my secret. I'm always sweaty.
We filed the suit a couple weeks ago. We've accomplished service this week. We're announcing it today. When the defendants answer in 20 days from now, they'll have about 60 days to move dismiss the suit. And we'll go through the same process we're going through in the Musk suit. We'll probably have some discovery, depositions of these folks, and then they'll try to dismiss the case. And then the court will say go forward or not. And then we'll march forward into discovery and try to get a trial date.
All right, so Bradley, get the calendar out. By the end of April, they've got to respond, and then they have 60 days in to file like a motion, a summary motion to dismiss based
Correct.
upon whatever their theory is. And then you move into discovery and whatnot. Do you have any type of program or internship that I could apply for so that I could be there for discovery?
Most of the world
need an intern.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Luckily, I got enough of those at the moment. Most of the world knows by now that I have very strong feelings about transparency in litigation. And
yeah, the guy's too much of a pro. He's not going to be down with the clown show. I am fully for the clown show, though. I think that would be fucking amazing. Could you imagine Tim Pool sitting down for his deposition and seeing Sam Cedar just sitting across the aisle there with the tape recorder? He's like, oh no, I'm just here to record. It's my job.
that I believe that more public attention to the court process and what's happening is good for the justice system. And therefore, anything that's a public record in my cases, I not only direct the media to where it's at, but I encourage them to report on it. And in this case, you better be sure that we're taking these depositions and doing this discovery. We will fight as hard as we can to make sure that the public interest is met and that these people can see what is happening in this case. Look,
Sam Cedar in the courtroom when Crowder takes a stand. Oh man, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, there's not even a trial date set yet. They're trying to get through the first phase. He's made it very clear. Okay, we can't get too excited about all this just off the jump. We're gonna have to follow this, and ideally, this is going to be a public court case that is allowed to be shown on live YouTubes, because that way I can watch the whole thing start to finish. And I would very much like to do that, like I did with the Alex Jones civil trial. That was glorious. Oh man, that was premium entertainment. Watching that man just fucking fluster and then try to get out of so many things, or when he finally had to give his deposition and he was just like dying, he literally like did what is it, that like Japanese the self immolation or whatever. He was like literally dying on stage to a degree where they had to get him like lozenges and stuff. He's like, oh god, I gotta speak up, help, I can't answer the questions. And then I was like, I've never seen Alex like this. He's like, he tried every trick in the book, and then now, yes, seppuku or seppuku. Let's learn how to pronounce it. Learn how to pronounce seppuku. Ad. It's an ad.
Oat cream blend.
It's just wait for the ad. Okay, there we go. YouTube, this is great. They're just a little spinning wheel of nothing right now. Loving this. Incredible. I'm learning so much about language. Still spinning.
It's these
Oh,
word
okay.
from Japanese. In Japanese, a form of taking one's own life. In the feudal Japanese samurai class. Seppuku.
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 Seppuku. Oh, it's way more soft than everyone in the chats was saying. People were like, it's pronounced seppuku, all caps. I was like, it's probably way softer. Seppuku, like that. Yes, I have been watching Shogun. I clearly have not learned a single thing. I did learn that British Columbia, where I live, can be transformed to look like anything, thanks to movie magic. Because half the time I'm like, hey, I know that forest, I know that beach, I've been there before. And I was like, that's not feudal Japan. I know that's not. Oh, it's crazy. Movies. They're magic. Eric Delorded, thanks for resubscribing with the Prime. Appreciate you.
There may be some trade secrets or something like that. They get sealed up from here and there. Or then again, you may have it like a situation like Alex Jones and Elon Musk, where the lawyers fail to get a protective order and it just all automatically becomes public. But I can tell you that one way or another, the information that's critical for the public to know, to understand how this defamation happens, we're going to get that into the public eye. So y'all should be looking forward to that in the next couple months.
All right, great. I'm still not giving up the dream of becoming an intern for you, but we can talk about that maybe.
Go ahead and send me over a resume and we'll
I will
talk.
send you a resume. 1 year of law school, I went to 1 year of law school. I did my civil pro.
Then Sam realized he had to follow his dreams of becoming a leg model. And so he went down that road, and the world has never been the same.
Cases. So
this is not an interview, Sam.
Okay, all right. I just
The magic is real. My parents worked on stuff like RoboCop and Hocus Pocus. So cool. Yeah, no. I've worked in the film. That used to be my full-time job before I was the Serfs. I was working in the film industry. I was first working as an independent editor and then a special effects supervisor, and also for a long time just PA, grunt, extra, doing shitty stuff in the background of movies. Yeah, it's a many splendid thing. Also terribly horrifying, exploitative, and one of the worst industries I've ever worked in for that.
Do you want to know where I see myself in 5 years?
Right, exactly. Yeah. What would you say is your biggest weakness, Sam?
Well, I got a lot, but we don't have time.
Your biggest weakness is trying to turn a legitimate lawyer and his operation into a clown show. That's what you're doing, Sam. God damn it! He's gonna be there with Tim Pool across from him, and Tim Pool will be saying something. And he'll be like, "Pause it!" And then everyone's like, "Ah, he said the thing."
That now. So we will keep our ears open. Mark Bankston, partner at the law firm Farrar and Ball. Folks,
Doing the Lord's work.
we will put a
Yes.
link
Agreed.
to the Huffington Post publication of this petition. Thanks so much for your time today. Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Before I came across this channel, I thought Lance from the Serfs was like Dude from Chapo, and there was a whole host of folks who were part of the Serfs. I mean, there's Kyle, who does both the editing and the graphics. Sometimes there's Olive, who does the graphics. There's the numerous mods who make the entire show possible. Without them, this place would fill with the worst of baddies, and they keep the whole place safe. Which is nice. Excellent work, by the way. I want to interview Mark Bankston again. I've had him on the show before. Guy is just awesome. Very, very, down to earth, wholesome and humble person for considering the hard work he's doing. His stuff with Alex Jones was absolutely phenomenal and sensational. That's probably one of the best moments I've seen in actual court. That wasn't like court TV or something like that. So that was a beautiful, splendid thing. And yeah, all I can say here is get him.
Tell when you're just loving an interview, you get more energized as it goes on.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nexibus, thank you very much for the tier 1 new sub. Everyone be cozy.
I honestly, I feel like I don't even have to ask, but I imagine the audience would be okay with me taking a leave of absence to
Yes.
serve as his intern. I will just get him coffee as long as I can sit in the room
Okay, so you're
during that
I will be ready to be pleasantly surprised. I don't think Mark's gonna go for this. I think this is way too online, but if he does, holy shit, the memes will flow. It will be unbelievable if Sam could pull that off. He doesn't have to do a thing. He could just sit there in the corner with his arms just like this the whole time and stay in perfect silence, stillness even, like without blinking. He could do that and it would be absolutely incredible.
deposition.
I would love like the idea of you being an intern and you have like some wig or glasses on, and then you sit down and Steven Crowder sits down to.
If he's wearing an even bigger mustache above his actual mustache, he's just got this huge one, like keeps falling down. You got to talk in a 1940s voice for no reason. 1950s even, you know? Just be like, see, we got to catch you bad guys. Pause it.
Give his deposition, and you go.
Crowder has a panic.
That's not what this is.
He thinks he's going crazy.
Sam Cedar, what a fucking nightmare!
Oh no, Sam Cedar.
It's happening
Is this my
again!
nightmare?
I go back to law school just so that I can actually work at the firm for free. Let me ask one question, Mark. Please, one
Be the
question.
janitor and come in and like, oh, sorry, you guys are using this room. Goodwill Hunting kind of thing. Oh my god. This is Steven's double take.
Oh my god. Oh. I mean, there's got to.
Oh, the Goodwill Hunting bit would be perfect. Have him walk in and then start writing out what looks like an equation on a chalkboard so everyone can go silent and some really passionate music plays and everyone's like, there's no way he's doing this. My God, no one's ever solved it. But it's just like Steven Crowder's divorce fucking settlement. The amount he has to pay out or some shit. And then like slowly walk away.
I mean, like, I don't know where they do the deposition, but how awesome would it be? Just even like, I'll serve an internship of just me sitting on the street.
I mean, Mark's in
front
Texas.
of the office.
Howdy, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can unlock bonus uncensored episodes of Mind Explosions by going to patreon.com/the Serfs. Our videos couldn't exist without your support, and all our content is released early to our Patreon subscribers, as well as a ton of extra content you can't get anywhere else. Please like, subscribe, and thumbs up this channel, and if you're feeling extra perky, share it anywhere you think people would like to see or learn from our videos. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We first want to give a shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. This program is produced thanks to the generous support of our Patreon supporters: Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbar Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multi Mondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Bomey, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Travis McClinton, and Words Greenwood. As well as every other person you see on the screen right now, this show would not be possible without them. And if you want to join these wonderful people who make this entire program possible, simply go to patreon.com/theserfs and you can unlock uncensored and bonus episodes and, you know, help us exist.